So when you animate, you usually have two choices for frame rate, 24 frames per second or 12 frames per second. Which one will you use? Hey guys, welcome back to Learning Curve Tech, where I learn tech with you. And if you're new to this channel and you want to get more creative tech videos like this one every week, subscribe and hit the bell. It would really mean a lot. Now, one of the most confusing parts about animation is frame rate. Simply put, frame rate is the rate you play your still frames at to get the illusion of life. But that's not all there is to it. A higher frame rate is usually more smooth and realistic, while a lower frame rate is usually choppier and less realistic. Now, films like Missing Link or Coraline at Leica Studios generally use 24 frames per second. However, films like Shaun the Sheep or Wallace and Gromit at Aardman Studios usually use 12 frames per second. You may also hear this as ones versus twos, ones being 24 frames per second and twos being 12 frames per second. But really the only difference between saying the exact frame rate and saying ones or twos is that ones or twos can go with any frame rate. So if ones is 30 frames per second, then twos would be 15 frames per second. And if ones is 60, then twos is 30. So twos on 24 frames per second is actually 12 frames per second. But instead you are taking 2 frames for every pose and then playing it back at 24 frames per second. Twos is better for small movements like the close-up of a moving eye that you can't really move small enough to justify shooting in ones, while ones is better for large and fast movements. Hopefully that clears it up for you. And if you're liking this video so far, go ahead and smash that like button or just tap it lightly if you don't like destroying things. So now, the difference between 12 and 24 frames per second. Basically, 24 is a lot smoother, but 12 is a lot easier to shoot. Personally, I like to shoot in 12 frames per second as it still gets a good sense of motion, but it is also a lot easier to manage than 24 frames per second. However, I shoot in twos and play it back at 24 frames per second. This gives you the ability to switch between ones and twos whenever you want and still play it back at 24 frames per second. This is what I would recommend for you to do if you are a beginner. But really, whatever you like doing better, develop your own style. If you like shooting on 3s or 4s, I don't care. It's your style. But do remember, the more frames you have and the less of a hold between movements, the smoother your animations will be. If you're playing it back at 12 frames per second, your movements should be bigger. But if you are playing it back at a higher frame rate, such as 24 frames per second, your movements should be smaller. Did I just say that? Now, if you have any questions about this video, let me know in the comments below and I'll be sure to try and answer them. Then check out one of these videos here and subscribe right here. That's all for today, guys, and I'll see you next time on Learning Curve Tech.